Welcome to the show. Author of the book, Man Up, How to Cut the BS and Dominate in Business and in Life. He and his family are immigrants who escaped communism and came to the United States to find freedom, opportunity, and a better way of life. Today, Bedros is a serial entrepreneur and investor in over a dozen industry-leading brands and businesses. He is the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, 3 times listed in Inc. magazine, as well as Entrepreneur magazine, 100 fastest growing franchise brands in the world. Particularly my favorite, Bedros runs several programs, one being Squire, an intensive military-style challenge for fathers and sons to help them become better men and leaders of their own lives and in their communities. While he's not a military veteran, he's the closest thing to an ally this military community possibly can have, and he's got critical advice for not only our military men and women, but for everyone who wants to get their lives together. Bedros, as always, welcome to the Amy Is Show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Amy.
Of course.
Great to see you again.
Thank you. You as well. We originally met at Operation Black Site. That's another program that you're involved with.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that so the audience knows what we got going on there.
Yeah. So obviously you being an Army veteran, it was fun having you at Operation Black Site. Dan Fleischman and I decided that we were going to create this experience where what if we can bring on, it always starts with what if. And one day Dan texts me and he says, hey, I'm driving to your office and I need to borrow the conference room where we have a giant marker board. He goes, I need about 2 hours in there, then I'm going to call you in. And he goes, what if we buy this ranch? And what if on this ranch we create all these experiential events, and one of them being Operation Black Site? I said, tell me more. So I walk into the conference room after him spending 2 hours in there. And he's like, all right, so we take our Navy SEAL friends and we take our Green Beret friends. So we've got Ray Kashkar, we got Will Brenham as Navy SEALs, and then we've got Tim Kennedy, he's a Green Beret. And then we also brought in Michael Chandler, UFC fighter, right? And a few other amazing grapplers and shooters. And what if we can take entrepreneurs, male and female, for 3 days through a hand-to-hand combat experience, shooting experience, where they become their own bodyguard, right? I was like, Dan, I think you're making a lot of sense. And then I said, well, what if like during the lunches and the dinners, we have speakers come in and speak about how to grow their businesses, since these are entrepreneurs. Yes, they can all network together, and it's really cool that they're going to learn to be like great Americans and be able to learn from some of the best in the world who have the experience, both grappling and offensive, defensive shooting. But what if we can also create this mastermind experience for them as well and bring some of our friends who are top entrepreneurs? And that's how Operation Black Site came to be. And then, of course, that continued to stack on top of itself, because then we brought in our friend Chris. And Chris is a SEER instructor, former Air Force. And Chris goes, well, these guys and gals would need to learn how to break out of handcuffs and zip cuffs and duct tape. And what if they get abducted? And that's not too far off, because here we are, just I think a year and a half ago, there was a CEO of a pretty big apparel company that got abducted after leaving a party. The car that he was in was stopped under a red light. Thankfully, he had a bodyguard with him, and the bodyguard was armed, and a shootout ensued, and the bad guys were unable to abduct him. But the reality is that we live in a time that the police are going to come after the fact, and when they come, they're going to just take a report. So Dan and I, being entrepreneurs, Dan and I being pro-America and pro-military, wanted to really use military veterans to train military veterans and UFC fighters to train some of the best entrepreneurs on the planet. And that's how Operation Black Site came to be.
Well, I had a great time. And for me, having military background, having been through, real serious training, having been over to Afghanistan myself, like that was really realistic training that we went through. We did get to do the exercise of, breaking the handcuffs and using shoelaces to get out of zip ties and things like that. So it is very valuable training. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, here in Los Angeles, which is where I'm based, there's a really high crime rate. I mean, people are just walking down the street to get coffee in the morning, held at gunpoint, having their watches stolen, their homes being invaded, and unfortunately the cops really aren't able to do very much, or they get there way too late. So valuable training, but I just wanted to give that some color, because it is really amazing the types of programs that you offer at your ranch that you have, and the people that you have come and teach those. I mean, it's really, really cool, and I know that's where we met each other, and I love the training. So my show, as we were talking about just before we got started, it's a military undertone, and I want to have guests on the show. And you could not be a better fit to help military veterans with their transition, going from military life to civilian life. And if there's a guy who's figured out the secret recipe on just being present, being entrepreneurial, chasing what you want, and really kicking the negative things that have come your way to the side and like proceeding forward, that's you. You are the epitome of that. Being an immigrant to the United States, escaping communism, as I mentioned during your intro, but going from literally zero and having nothing to building this empire that you've built, the following that you've built, the community that you've built, it's really impressive. And so, having you on the show, I think, is so awesome. And again, I'm so grateful to have you here because you have so much valuable insight to share with our military men and women departing and starting from scratch, because that's essentially what it is in most of those cases. Not everybody that's leaving the military has the opportunity to leave and walk right into something, another safety net. Mm-hmm. They're leaving. They don't know what to wear anymore. They don't know what they're going to do for income. They don't know, where they're going to get health insurance or, when they're going to get seen because the wait list at the VA is so long. They don't know how to write a resume. They don't know how to get their mind right? Because when you have someone telling you, hey, it's time to get up, this is your hit time to be at this training, this is where your next meal is coming from, to all of a sudden you have nothing. There's nobody telling you what to do anymore. The only person you can rely on now is yourself, right? And that's where the highest rate of suicide comes from. That's where the failure rate comes in. That's where the depression and anxiety come in. So I want to start off just by talking a little bit about your journey and how you got started in your particular career. And you walk me through like the mindset and what you had to do to go from being, for lack of a better way of putting it, zero to hero. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, you almost have no choice, right? Because when you're an immigrant to this country, especially think 1980. So 1980, June 16, 1980, I was 6 years old when we landed in LAX. And my dad was a member of the Communist Party in Armenia, which was under Soviet rule. And my brother, who's 14 years older than me, was about to go into the Soviet army. And my dad, his philosophy was, there's no way that I'm going to allow my son to go into the Soviet army, a country that came and occupied Armenia, our country, and to go fight a battle for the Russians in Afghanistan. If you remember, in the 80s, the Soviet Union was at war in Afghanistan, and so many soldiers were coming back with limbs missing. Yeah. And my dad said, I have no problem sending my son to war for our country, for our cause, but not for the occupying country of Soviet Union. So he knew he had 1 year left before my brother was to go into the Soviet army. And so in that year, he amassed 23 or 24,000 rubles he was a tailor, and he worked in a suit manufacturing plant, and he would steal material and he would make suits for anyone who wanted to buy it on the black market. And he did this for a whole year, amassed about 23,000 rubles, and he bribed some officials in the government to allow us to escape into Italy. So it was the story that we told the Soviet government, my dad told, was that we're just going on a family vacation. But some people within the Russian Soviet government knew that we were actually going to escape. And they had been bribed by my dad. So we go into Italy. We're in Rome for 10 days. And here's the crazy thing. Last week, or maybe a week and a half ago, I was in Austin, Texas, speaking at an event. And I'm sitting at the hotel restaurant, and a couple come up to me and they're like, hey, our parents, this gentleman's parents, he goes, they owned one of the hotels that would take in Armenian refugees in Rome, Italy, as you guys were transitioning to go into the United States. And we had this like deep, meaningful talk and conversation. And he goes, I bet you probably went through my mom and dad's hotel. And I said, I totally remember what those hotels were like. There was a certain amount of rooms that were sectioned off for us immigrants, and they were kind to us, and they would feed us 3 times a day. And wow. Yeah. And so like here I am, like whatever, 30 some odd years later, meeting someone who his parents helped my family along, right, as we were going through.
What are the chances of that?
Bananas. And he goes, he follows me on social media. We had exchanged some DMs, but I didn't put a name to the face. And so, like, that's the beauty of social media, right?
Yeah.
Like, it makes the world even smaller. And so, anyway, we went to the American consulate in Rome, and my dad's like, "Hey, I'm a Communist Party member. I want to defect." Along with my family. And so we find ourselves in Southern California. But you're growing up in Section 8 housing. You don't speak the language. You don't understand the culture. You got funny clothes. You have food stamps. My whole family was working under the table jobs, like pumping gas and a waiter at a restaurant, a busboy. And so it wasn't like we made a lot of money, but my dad was just ecstatic that we were here in the United States. And all he kept telling me, being the youngest, I was 6 years old, is that this country will give you anything you want in life as long as you assimilate and serve the people in this country. And so I think being the youngest, I was brainwashed the most by my dad, who was he's an American through and through. Like, how he ended up being born and growing up in a Soviet country, I have no idea. But he wore Jordache jeans, Ray-Ban glasses. He listened to the Beach Boys in Armenia, right? He would buy this stuff on the black market. And so, like, this guy was American through and through. And so he was just born in the wrong place. And so as he brainwashed me into, like, loving this country, and I'm so grateful for that, I always have, and I did exactly that. As long as I could serve people and be good to people and help them out, I found that people would give me an opportunity, and doors would open up and chances would be created. And so I assimilated the best I could, lost my accent, learned the language, became an American citizen, took the oath to protect and defend the Constitution, just like you did when you joined the Army. People like me who have to become a naturalized citizen have to take the same oath. And I wish my son and daughter would take that oath. They were born here, right? They're born a citizen. And so it was rough growing up in government-assisted housing, et cetera. But as we made our way and I got older, I realized that I was a fat kid. And I realized that as I'm going through high school, if I plan on making it to prom, I need to ask this hot girl named Nakaya to the prom. And if she's going to say yes, I need to lose weight. Like, my parents didn't put me into any sports, right? When you're a foreigner, you're an immigrant, they're just all working. They're trying to keep a roof over your head. So they don't put me into any sports. We're not eating healthy. We don't even know what eating healthy means. Like, we would literally find food in dumpsters behind grocery stores.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like bread that's expired, milk that's expired, cheese that's expired. My mom would pick off the mold, and she'd grill up the bread with oil and eggs and flour. For some reason, she wanted to put more carbs on carbs. And then she would ask me why I'm so fat as a kid. Like, a true story, right? And I was like, I had no idea. And so anyway, long story short, in high school, though, I'm like, okay, girls are cool. Like, now I'm interested in girls. And it was the year before, junior year, before prom. And in my science class was this guy named Dave. And Dave was jacked. He was in great shape. He's on the high school football team, and he's my science partner. So I'm like, dude, how are you in great shape? Like, how can I be in great shape? Because I need to ask Nakaya to the prom, and if I know if I'm in great shape, she'll say yes.
Yeah, shout out to Nakaya.
Yeah.
We all need one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What a great inspiration. Long story short, he takes me into the school gym, first workout ever. Nerves, right? These guys are clanging and banging, they're squatting, they're deadlifting, they're benching, and it's not like the weights that you would find at a gym that's all rubber coated. These are metal plates, and I'm like, holy hell, this is intimidating. So I spent that summer working out at a Bally's Total Fitness, eating as clean as I could. He's like, hey, you got to eat more protein, less fat, less carbs. And I lost like 34, 35 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I was a different young man coming in my senior year of high school. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh my God, you look great, you look amazing, holy cow. And it's like, I'm the new kid in school. Like, for the last 3 years, no one noticed me. And now, senior year, I'm the new kid in school. I never had the confidence to ask Nakaya to
I was going to say, like, please tell me the end of this punchline here is that you guys got a date.
Never went on a date, never went to the prom. And I don't know if she hears me talking about this or not. I don't even know her last name. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is, she inspired me, but I did miss the prom. And I realized I want my path to be in fitness. Like, more than the physical change, as I left high school, I knew that I wanted to help people have the mental change that I got, the emotional resilience that I built as I began to get in shape and be consistent in the gym and go during the days that I didn't feel like working out. And, tweak my diet and see the change in my body fat percentage. And all those things to me were so fascinating. And I started to just consume information on that. So my goal was to be a personal trainer. Ultimately, one of my personal training clients encouraged me to open up my own personal training studio. His name is Jim Franco. He later ended up being my mentor. And let's see, he was 62 when I met him. He's 81 today. We still keep in touch. So this was like 23 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, 23 years ago. He was one of my first personal training clients. Rough and tumble man, but an entrepreneur, millionaire. He would show up with different cars in the parking lot. I'm like, Jim, how many cars do you have? He goes, several. I'm like, you got a classic car, you got a Mercedes, now you're showing up in the Cadillac Escalade. He's like, you can have multiple cars too. I'm like, dude, I got a 79 Toyota pickup and it breaks down all the time. Like, no, I can't. And he changed, and one day he goes, you know what your problem is? You can't sell. And I said, well, I beg to differ, Jim. I sold you on 6 months of personal training 3 times a year. And the way it was is, yeah, I made the sale. The gym gets the money. I would just get my $12 an hour to train them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not like I got that $3,600 or whatever it was that he paid. He goes, actually, I came in here looking for personal training 3 times a week. And you just took my order. You're an order taker. You're not a closer. And he would speak very directly to me. He was always brutally honest. And so giving him a little pushback, I said, well, Jim, why don't you help me become a better closer? And so the next day he shows up with books from Brian Tracy, Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar, these old school sales trainers, right? And I'm reading these books, and then I end up buying audio cassettes, and I'm listening to their sales training, and all of a sudden I'm closing everybody in the gym. Like, everyone's my personal training client, and I can quit my 2 side jobs that I had.
Wow.
So I had a side job at Disneyland as a busboy, and I worked as a bouncer at a gay bar because the gay bar paid more than the straight bar.
Wow.
I later found out during my second week working the gay bar, the reason was skinheads would come to the parking lot and they would wait for the bar to give out so that they can gay bash. And it was our job as bouncers to prevent that, obviously, right? So I was like, holy hell, I get why I get paid more. Like, every weekend I'm getting in fights. And
It's a good thing you were working out.
Yeah, that's for sure. I was working out and I was an angry young man, so that helped out. Nevertheless, you don't want to always get in fights because you don't know that the odds are always stacked in your favor. So Jim helps me make money. He encourages me to open up my personal training studio. That led to opening up 4 more, and ultimately ended up selling all 5 locations. That was my first experience as an entrepreneur, like building businesses and then selling it, right? And a few years later, the economy crashes, the housing market crash. And when the housing market crashes in 2008, I realized that personal training on a one-on-one basis is something that most people can't afford anymore. They can't pay $300, $500, $600 a month. I was like, what if I can take this outdoor boot camp and bring it indoors, right? Group training, 1 coach, 30 to 40 clients, they're each paying like, whatever, $100, $150 a month. People can still afford that. And so to prove the concept, I brought that outdoor boot camp indoors, and I didn't want to sign a lease anywhere. So I found a gymnastics center in Costa Mesa, California. And they got the carpet bonded foam floors, and so they're real soft and mushy floors. And I said, hey, if I bring some dumbbells here and some kettlebells and some sandbags, can I pay you guys rent to train clients here in a group in the mornings? Because they were not open until school gave out, because
all the kids,
all the kids, right? And they go, yeah, pay us money to use it in the morning time. So every morning I would run 3 classes, and I would pay them something like $2,500 a month. And then with those 3 classes that I would run every morning, I was making about $17,000 a month.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy crap, like, this model can work. I could probably scale this across the country. Personal trainers who had all these gyms were going out of business because no one's buying one-on-one personal training. And I realized that I can get them to sell all their big equipment, open up space to do group training, boot camps, right? And so that's how Fit Body Boot Camp came to be. So that was by 2009. By 2011, I had sold 118 locations, not franchised yet. I was licensing them. I didn't even know what a franchise was, right? Like, you asked me franchise, I'd go like, oh, like Subway sandwich. That's
really
franchise.
a bootstrap operation here.
Yeah, I had no fucking clue what I was doing. And so 218 locations in, the state of California comes and goes, hey, we're going to fine you $2,500 per location. And I'm like, what for? What did I do wrong, right? They said, well, you're giving these licensees a protected territory, like a 5-6 mile territory. I said, well, that's because CrossFit doesn't give a protected territory. Like they open up CrossFits right across the street from each other, and like 2 CrossFit owners are competing and arguing, and I don't want that for my Fit Body owners. They go, well, that's why they don't give a territory. So there's a couple of check boxes that if you check off any one of these check boxes, one of them being giving it protected territory, you officially have crossed the line into franchising. And now the Federal Trade Commission wants to whack you in the pee-pee. And I realize
that's one location I don't want to be whacked.
Right, exactly. And I realize I ain't got the money to pay them $2,500 fine per location 118 times, right? And so I go, look, all these licensees are counting on me right now. Like I support them, I help them with their marketing ideas. This isn't like a one-off sale. And so if you're trying to find me, I'm gonna have to go bankrupt and then go live on my mom's couch. And if I go bankrupt, there's no one that's gonna support them. And I ain't got the money to pay you. So to the credit of the state of California, they said, all right, don't sell any more new locations, become a franchise, be an official franchise, and then you're good to go. And we won't take that fine. So they waived the fine. It took me 11 months to become a franchise. So late 2012, we became a franchise. And by 2015, we had grown to several hundred locations. And that's when we hit the Inc. 5000 list, Entrepreneur Magazine's top 100 fastest growing franchises. And we just hockey sticked from there. And I found that, people were asking me to come speak at events, right? So I'm speaking at events and they're like, man, can you coach me and mentor me? Sure. So that's create a coaching program and teaching them how to become better entrepreneurs and scale their businesses. And along the way, I ended up meeting military men and women that were coming out of the military and who wanted to be entrepreneurs. One of them was a SEAL, Jason Redman, wrote an amazing book, New York Times bestseller. And he was shot up in 2007. He was shot once in the face, once in the arm, 7 times across the body. But thankfully, that particular night on that mission in 2007, he wore his body armor. But he talks about how, as Navy SEALs, they're the predators, and in that moment, he became the prey. And so, thankfully, they were able to save his life. 37 surgeries later.
I mean, that's a miracle, truly. I mean, just to get shot one time and to survive, 7 times is insane.
Yeah, like your listeners should just look up Jason Redman, get his book and read it. The story is phenomenal. Up until recently, he was the guy that held the record, and this is a record no one wants to hold, where what's that big giant airplane in the air that is overlooking a mission and they'll drop bombs when needed?
Well, there's blimps that they have up in the air over bases, and then there's not all over all the
AC something, AC 170 or something. So anyway, people will leave in the comment section the correct thing. But
yeah, let me know. Giant
plane up there that's kind of speaking down to Jason Redman and his fellow SEALs as they're trying to get to this house that's 400 yards away. And he gets on their way there. They're like, hey, there's some dudes hiding in the bushes. We can see their heat signature, et cetera. And they think they're just hiding. Little did they know they're behind machine guns.
Oh, no.
Right? And since the machine gun's not hot yet, it hasn't been fired, they can't tell. They're just seeing 4 dudes laying in the grass. So anyway, as Jason and his team gets closer, they light him up. Jason gets shot up. They rescue him. But to rescue him, his team had to call in an airstrike. And the airstrike was 14 yards away from Jason. And the plane up there is like, look, we're afraid we're going to kill him. And his buddy said, look, if you don't make this airstrike and try and hit the target directly, not only Jason's going to die, but we're all going to die.
Yeah.
And so he actually caught some shrapnel from that airstrike, but the bad guys died. They rescued him. 37 surgeries later, pieced them together. But he was one of my first coaching clients. He's now a friend and business partner. But since then, I've coached and mentored several Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, Green Berets, Army Rangers, a host of military men and women who want to become entrepreneurs. And what I hear from every single one of them when they come out is, especially those in the special operations community, is I lost my sense of mission, purpose, team. And I'm tired of having a job where I just clock in and clock out. There's no meaning behind it. I need something meaningful, purpose-driven. I need to, chase something like a mission, right? You guys come out of the military and you're just wired to be on missions. Like you've gone on a ton of missions, I'm sure. And so when you are all of a sudden absent of your purpose, mission, and a team that you can rely on, you feel all alone. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, like one day you're in service, next day you're not. It's not like there's a, hey, go here for the next 6 months. We're going to train you to be an entrepreneur and make it in the civilian world.
Yeah, no, I mean, they really try. I say they as in, there are some VA programs, there's some yellow ribbon programs, there's some things that they do, but unfortunately it's just, it's coming to them at a time where they're so like deer in the headlight that for a lot of people, especially for me, it didn't sink in at the time, and it wasn't the right type of program. So your very valid point. I just interviewed with Dean Stott, who's a British Army SBS
good friend of mine,
the other day, and him and his wife Alana, who I also had on the show separately, they both kind of said the same thing. Like, you train these people to become killers. That is basic training, is to train that person to use a weapon, an M4 or M16, depending on what era you went to basic training. And you're teaching them how to call for fire. You're teaching them life-saving skills, etc. And then they spend years in the military, doing just those things, and then they kick them out,
Right.
and it's just like, okay, you're out on your own. And it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? Go get a 9-to-5 job? Like a clock in, clock out, and what, I'm filling packages at Amazon or something like that. It just, that's basically what happens. They're just kind of left without purpose, without mission, without direction, without community often. So you're hitting the nail on the head. And that's, the purpose of this conversation is, I'd love to be able to help those folks that are going through that, because it's a very, very hard place to be, kind of reorient themselves. And, something that you stood out to me when you were talking about your friend that was unfortunately shot. There was a moment where the plane and the troops on the ground were saying that he's 14 feet away. And I just have to mention, like, that is why attention to detail is just drilled into us in the military. Like, you have to get your points right. You have to get your distance and your measurements correct for your land navigation. And that translates to exactly what we're talking about now is, just maybe take a beat and, where are you at? Orient yourself. Where's your next target? Where's your next mission? Where's the next spot? Like, use that detail, to laser focus on that so you can get it right. And so, I'd love to hear your advice. What you mentioned, you've been coaching all of these people that are in transition, that have left the service, and you're working with them now. What would you tell someone to do, as they're getting out?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me too is these guys and gals come to me because they got out of the military, thought that a civilian job would work for them. Most realize, nope, this ain't going to cut it, especially if they come from special operations, right? But I imagine if you come from any background of military, you probably expect more of yourself. You just have higher standards. And so you go, okay, having a job is not enough. I'm going to try and do my own thing. And so they'll find me for business coaching. And I've got this rule where, like I said, I'm a civilian. I've never been in the military. And my dad said, serve this country. So one way I could serve this country is to serve the military men and women. And so I coached them all for free. And so as long as they're willing to take action, I'll coach them all for free. Now, if you stop taking action, then that's a different story, right? Then I can't invest my time. And so, but in the process of helping them through the business, you can't help but meet the individual where they're at. And so all the conversations, coaching calls, coaching sessions are not just about business and entrepreneurship. It's, hey, how's your personal life? How are things going? Oh, I'm having a dark day. Why are you having a dark day? Well, in the process of building my business, this is a pretty lonely journey. Huh. And you hear that over and over again. Well, what do you mean? Well, when I was on the teams or when I was on a Ranger, we had a team, man. We had a mission all the time. And we had commanders and we had chain of command. And now I don't know where I fall, and I don't know what to do next, and no one's telling me this thing, and I don't know what my mission is. And so I would hear that over and over again, and I would always see it tied back into purpose. And they felt like they were part of such a significant movement, purpose. And so some who had, they dark thoughts and for whatever reason would just open up to me about it. I'm like, listen, we're not going to make a bad decision on temporary feelings. Like, we're not going to make a permanent decision on temporary feelings. Do I have your commitment? Yes.
Facts.
Yeah. And so thankfully, and I don't know why it is that they trust me. Maybe it's like, well, hey, he's my business coach, so if I'm going to trust him with my money, I'll kind of trust what he's saying. But if you're drinking alcohol, which sounds like you were when you were having these dark thoughts, kind of have your commitment, maybe just giving it up for 30 days. Not for life, just 30 days. And I would have them take these little micro steps, right? And because I found that, my process of losing weight, so I'm going all the way back to high school. Dave was just, Dave, that a high school football athlete, he said, just work out. For the first month, just work out. I was like, no. What should I eat? What should I limit? He goes, just work out. Like, you can't just go from like not working out and eating right to working right and trying to hit your macros. And so he helped me institute one change at a time. And throughout that whole summer break, I ended up losing a lot of weight. And so I go, well, that works for all of us. Like in business, if I want to create 5 different companies, I have to create one first and have singularity of focus, work on the task at hand, and then make enough money to use some of that money to create the second company and then third company, et cetera. So I was very familiar with microtasking. And I realized, okay, first of all, these guys trust me, so we're not going to make a permanent decision on temporary feelings. You're with me? Yes, great. You got my numbers. Just text me every day. Let me know how you're feeling, et cetera. So then I installed accountability, right? And then after that, what is the thing that kind of led you to this? Like what happens? Usually, typically, an argument takes place at home. And then to take the edge off the argument, I'm going to have some whiskey. I'm going to have some vodka. I'm going to have tequila, a shot of tequila. That leads to some dark thoughts, especially if you come from a world of PTSD. Mm-hmm. And so, all right, well, you can't stop the arguments because you probably can't control the other person in the house, but you can control the alcohol, which takes you down the rabbit hole. So what if we stop that for 30 days? Okay, cool. So now we're doing micro tasks. We've committed to not making a permanent decision on temporary feelings. We are being held accountable to someone else, right? And by the way, that's what AA is. I forget the founder's name, Bill something, the guy that founded Alcoholics Anonymous. What a wonderful story, this how AA came to be. He kept trying to stop drinking alcohol because it would just get a hold of him. He'd get pissed drunk and then start making bad decisions and lose his job. And he kept promising his wife that he's going to quit alcohol, and then he'd quit for 3-4 weeks and then get right back to it. And one day he's just like, I guess I'm just meant to be a drunk my whole life. I've tried and tried and tried. I can't quit alcohol. I'm meant to be a drunk. And so he decides that he's going to try and just help other people. So I'm going to help these bums who are drinking wine and stuff. I'm going to see if I can help them quit drinking. And so he ends up helping a lot of people in his community who are down and out or homeless and drinking by just holding them accountable, right? Every day talking to them. And
he's still drinking at this point.
He's still drinking at this point, right? The founder, this is before AA came to be, Bill something, William something. He's still drinking at this point. Well, 16 weeks go by. His wife's like, hey, dummy, do you realize you haven't had a sip of alcohol for 16 weeks? This is the longest you've gone without drinking.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when you think about AA, what do they have? Sponsors.
They do.
Right?
Yeah.
He was the first sponsor. And so when you go into AA and you get a sponsor, it's not so much that the sponsor is there to hold you accountable. Yes, they are. But you're also there to hold the sponsor accountable because no one wants to be a hypocrite. And this guy stopped drinking because instead of focusing so hard on himself, he started focusing on others, service to others. That is the cloth that you're cut from, Amy. Like, you've been in the military for so long. It's literally, they call it the service. You're in the service to others. So I realized these guys need to quit alcohol. They need accountability. They need to be in service to others. And so I just had them do those micro little movements while building their business because I knew their business would ultimately become the mission and the purpose. And every single one of them have some kind of charity, and they're hiring former veterans or former military guys as veterans to work with them and for them. And so now they have a new set of purpose, mission, and team. But to help them overcome the demons, we had to create little micro steps of a commitment to not make a permanent decision on temporary feelings, to be held accountable to someone. In this case, it was to me because I was their business coach, to be able to stop the vice for at least 30 days. And then as we stop it for 30 days, hey, is life a little better with no alcohol? Yeah. Could you imagine what 60 days might feel like? How about 90 days?
Wow.
And before you know it, as it turns out, that thing is it's flammable. If you have a little pilot light, you put fuel on it, it's going to catch fire. So let's not, we all have the pilot light. We all have some level of stress in our life. Let's not throw accelerant on it in the form of alcohol. And before you know it, they started creating new mission purpose team. And here's why that's great for me as a business coach. As I saw this in these military guys, I had a coaching client. He's a former Super Bowl champion. He retired from the NFL, Super Bowl champion. I'll just leave his name out for the sake of the story. But he came to me and he's like, man, I'm depressed. Like when I met him, we met as friends, right? A mutual friend introduced us. And we're talking or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'm in a bit of a funk. And he's such a cool guy. Like, didn't have a Super Bowl ring on, but had it with him. And I don't know anything about sports because I never played sports as a kid.
Sports ball.
Yeah, sports balls, exactly. You know, you play sports ball.
Yeah.
You take the puck and you throw it in the thing. And so well, I'm like, wow, man, you're a Super Bowl champion, I heard from Lewis House. Lewis House introduced us. He goes, yeah, uh-huh. And he pulls out his Super Bowl ring, and he's like, put your hand out. And he puts it on my finger, and he goes, now make a fist. I do. And he takes his camera, and he stands in front of me, and he snaps a picture right from the ring to my face, right? It's one of my favorite pictures to date. Like, I've never played any kind of, like, competitive sports like that. And then he just takes the ring off, puts it back in his pocket. Very humble, modest guy, but just awesome dude. And we get to talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm in a bit of a funk. I'm like, how come? He's like, dude, I got a Super Bowl ring. I've played with the best of them. Like, I'm like the top of all athletes. And now I'm retired, and I don't know what to do, and, you know, whatever. So I'm like, dude, mission, purpose, team. And he goes, what? I go, yeah, you had a mission, the games. The games were your mission, purpose. Like, you guys, your team versus that team, that was your purpose. You guys had to win. And then team, you had your coaches, your athletes, your fellow athletes. He's like, yes. I go, that's what you need to get back to. All of a sudden, he starts creating a business, and that business takes off, and he becomes the leader. Voila, mission, purpose, team created.
Wow. And
so I realized it doesn't matter if you're a military veteran or if you're an athlete, or I have a client who's also become a dear friend of mine. He sold a real estate company for $300 million.
Holy moly.
And then, yeah, right? $300 million.
That's
and
a
then,
lot of shoes.
That's a lot of shoes. That's right. That's a lot of shoes. It's a lot of leather for those feet. And he spends a few months, you know, whatever, enjoying the wealth, right? But then he realizes he's kind of falling into a funk. A mutual friend introduces us, because now I've become like the man whisperer. A mutual friend introduces us, and this was pretty interesting. He knew the mutual friend. He tells the mutual friend, hey, I know Bedros is speaking at Joe Polish's event, and I know he's probably going to fly from either Ontario Airport or John Wayne. Instead of taking a first-class flight, he can fly in a private jet with me if I could have those 48 minutes of time with him on the flight. So I'm like, the mutual friend reaches out to me. I'm like, sure, great. I'll fly in your private jet.
I could use a little J flight. Yeah, no problem.
Right.
I got you.
Right. So we fly out of Orange County to Scottsdale. In that time, we meet him. Awesome human being. We're literally sitting like this, knee to knee, right? I'm like, dude, thank you so much for this flight. I really appreciate it. How could I help you? Like, I feel like I owe you money for this. Like, what do I owe for the flight? And he's like, don't worry about it. He goes, but here's my struggles. And again, I'm like, mission, purpose, team. He goes, yes. Again, you're building a real estate company. Mm-hmm. The mission is to sell it. The purpose is, you know, the team and make sure that all these agents make money. And then that team and you like go to battle against other real estate companies. Like, that is fucking awesome. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this entrepreneur loses all that by selling his company, never thinking about the transition. So both the military veteran, the multimillionaire entrepreneur, and NFL Super Bowl winning champion all needed one thing, which was what's next. And especially for men, but this applies to all humans, but we men especially, we need to keep building, we need to keep striving, we need to keep doing. If we don't, we feel useless. Useless. I believe that most women have factory installed purpose. For most women, their biological clock is ticking. They want to have a child. When they have a child, I got to take this little baby that came out of my body and look after it and care for it and nurture it and raise it and give it to humanity. Like, that's a pretty fucking awesome built-in purpose, right? We men don't have that. And so if we go into sports or entrepreneurship or in the military and we have a mission, purpose, team, and then we move out and in that transition, we better come up with what's next, because otherwise we end up doing something very self-destructive, which is alcohol, weed, anything to an excess, video games, television, food, pornography, you name it, anything to an excess just takes us down the rabbit hole, and then we start having really bad thoughts about permanently checking out.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, there's a concept in the military that I often see to be the case where when people leave, they forget about that concept. When you enter basic training, one of the very first things they do the first week that you're there is they assign you a battle buddy. And it's called a battle buddy because it's just like in the AA concept that you shared with us. It's a person to hold you accountable. You know where they are. You buddy check each other. You're checking their uniform. Do they have all their equipment? Is their supply list done? Like all of that, right? You're checking their bunk beds. Is it tucked in before the drill sergeants walk in? That's concept. It's day zero concept. And you have that concept all throughout your military career. Who's your battle buddy?
Beautiful.
And so when we leave the military, we often forget we need a battle buddy. Yeah. And Kelsey Sharon, she's a military veteran from the Canadian Army. I just had her on the show recently as well. She's got a buddy check bracelet that she sells in her store where it comes in a 2-pack. And the whole concept is give it to your battle buddy. Yeah. And she gave me one, which I thought was really sweet because, I mean, I'm single. I don't have a battle buddy, you know? Yeah. And so I very openly, that's part of my show. It's the reason why my show is called The Amy Is Show is because I'm filling in the blank of what I am. And I'm going through my own battle of finding my way after military life, right? And so for her, and we had this great conversation where we were talking about we need a battle buddy. You've got to have, the other person that you're looking to. And, even though we're far away, she lives in Canada, she calls me, she texts me, and I'm doing the same to her, right? And so find a battle buddy. I would just, I gain from that is that, your mission purpose team, to those of you that are listening, if these are any concepts that you're struggling with, if you're having a hard time, I think Bedros got some really killer advice here. Find your mission, find your purpose, and find your team. So. Yeah.
One, Kelsey is an amazing human being. I just love her and her energy. And number two, that whole concept of the battle buddy is, I hadn't heard it put that way before. Most of my coaching clients from the military have been SEALs. It's funny, you coach one SEAL, and then I guess all the communities are tight with SEAL, Rangers, whatever. And so all of a sudden I have a lot of SEAL clients, and they have swim buddies, right? Because, well, they're from the ocean. Yeah. And so a battle buddy, that makes absolutely sense. And in life, we need battle buddies. Like it is a pretty lonely journey going through life, being a part of 8 billion people, and you're trying to make your way. And it sometimes helps just going, you know what, this kind of sucks. Like looking at someone and going, hey, this kind of sucks. They're like, you know what, I feel your pain. Mm-hmm. I feel your pain. And they may not have the answer, but just venting, just listening. 90% of the time, my coaching clients who are going through those dark phases, I just had my earbuds on and I'm walking at the park. I do all my coaching calls, most of my coaching calls when I'm walking at the park, just getting some miles in. And I'm just listening. Like, I don't fucking know the thing that gave you PTSD. Like, I'm not from the military. I could imagine what it's like having doors blow up one after another each time they're making entry. I could imagine what it's like losing friends in battle. I could imagine what it's like years later going, was this war really worth it?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, especially for those of us, I mean, I'll tell you, I got out of the military in not a great way. 2022 was when I left the military, and that was when they pulled out of Afghanistan.
Right. Abruptly.
Abruptly. And there were people that lost their lives. Translators we worked with when I was over in Afghanistan, their families got killed. There was an effort to pull our translators' family out. And I think there's a woman that I served with, Major Shreves. I think she was successful in doing that. But it was so traumatic. And for me, it was like, wait a second, I'm definitely getting out. Like, this is crazy that all this time, energy, effort, money, resources went into this. And then we're just leaving it all for what? For what? So, sorry, I didn't mean to derail, but like basically that was the catalyst for me. And I think that's the story for so many other veterans of OEF.
And so think about that. And as you've lost friends and translators, and you might at some point, if you're having a bad day, and we're all allowed to have bad days.
Yeah.
Like, no human is free of that. Like, that's just the human journey. We're allowed to have bad days, but a bad day could snowball very quickly for someone who has seen things that the rest of us civilians haven't seen, who has experienced things that the rest of us civilians haven't experienced, like an instant loss of your friend in a very gruesome way, right? And so when you hear about that and you go, well, what was this war for?
Right.
And whatever, and I'm not trying to make this thing political, and this is just what I'm hearing from my friends. I could see why it's easy to go down that rabbit hole, and to have a battle buddy, to have a mission purpose team, to be working towards something and be held accountable, to have some structure in your life again. And gosh, doesn't matter the branch of the military you're from, structure is like
the Army's the best.
I'm not going to get into it because I love you all.
See with the Army v Navy game.
There you go. But it's important to have structure, and you guys like grew up on structure in the military, and to come out of life and like not have that structure,
Yeah.
I could see how that could just take you right down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. It does. Well, you know, this has been really helpful, I think, for a lot of people to find mission, purpose, and team as something to look to if they're struggling. One of the questions there's two questions I always ask my guests on the show. The first being, if someone's in crisis, like when I say crisis, I mean like immediate, like today is a tough day. They don't know if they're going to see tomorrow crisis. What is something that you would share with them right now in the moment to try to help them snap right out of it?
I would share two things. One, go out in nature immediately, and two, take your phone with you and call a friend. Call a friend and don't feel like you're going to interrupt them, that you're going to bother them, that they're too busy for you. Go out in nature. Just start walking. Start walking outdoors. I don't care if it's on the streets of a busy city like here. When we're stuck in four walls, we're not getting any sun, we're not getting any movement. Movement is powerful. There's something called bilateral stimulation, and it was created by this psychologist who one day figured out that, like, man, all my patients who are swimmers, are athletes who run, they seem to heal faster. They solve their life problems, right? The psychologist figured it out. And as he did research, created EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization. EMDR is all about, you know, tick, 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 anything repetitive. And so there's actually EMDR machines now where you might just be looking at a light and your eyes just going left and right, left and right, left and right. Or anytime you're working out repetitively, biking, running, jogging, what ends up happening is you create bilateral stimulation. You're using both sides of the brain to start solving your problems. So how many of us have experienced like, man, I was working out and I had this great fucking idea. I was working out and I solved this life problem that I have. That's because you're doing something repetitive and it puts you in a hypnotic trance and you're releasing dopamines. And then boom, your brain goes, hey, there's all these unresolved issues. Now would be a good time for us to start working on it. So bilateral stimulation is a real thing. And so just going out there, releasing dopamines, getting sun and getting movement, creating bilateral stimulation, and then get on the phone and call someone. And maybe 911 is the last resort because they're just going to send a cop and hopefully the cop will come talk to you. But call a friend. You got a friend, a sibling, a mom. Call someone without feeling like you're a bother to them, and just make this commitment to yourself that if I feel this way tomorrow, like maybe I'll do something about it then. And I know this sounds harsh, but this is just how I think. If I feel this way tomorrow, I'll do something about it then. But today, I'm not going to make any permanent decisions on this temporary feeling that I'm having. And odds are, if you do those things, you go outside and walk, you talk to a friend, and the friend doesn't need to have the solutions. You just need to vomit just your heart out to them. Odds are you're not going to feel that way tomorrow.
That's right.
And I know this from my own personal life because I come from a pretty fucked up childhood. Like I was molested as a kid by two older boys. I was beat up by gang members when I came here to America. When you're broke and you're a foreigner, like my trauma was very different than what you guys as veterans have experienced. But it's no different than the same part of the brain that lights up, the fight or flight part of the brain that lights up in a CAT scan is the same. And I've been in that position where I don't think I want to see tomorrow. And I've learned that this might be a permanent feeling, but I'm trying to come up with or a temporary feeling, but I'm trying to come up with a permanent solution. And let me go do this. Because I found that activity helped me before when I was sad. So let me go outside. Let me get some movement. Let me call a friend. As I've gotten older, like I realize there's no shame in this. There's a stigma that like, oh, you must be broken, you must be weak.
Well, that's why I love having guys like you on the show, because some of the toughest guys on the face of the planet with the craziest trainings that have been through the coolest things that you would see on like a TV show, they all tell me the same thing. We all have our moments like this. And guess what the punchline is? They all pass through it. You do get through it 100%. You will see tomorrow. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
Amazing, amazing idea. Thank you. The second thing I always ask my guests is I have a very charitable element to my show. There's a lot of great resources out there for veterans. What are some charities that you're a favorite fan of, or things that they can do, et cetera, to get plugged into charities? Are there any charities you want to shout out?
Yeah. There's 3 charities that I've been giving to for the last decade, actually. The first one is Shriners Children's Hospital, and they provide medical, their hospitals. When I started giving to them, they had 11 hospitals. Now they've got 22 hospitals. So they're the longest charity that I've been donating to for over 12 years.
I think I heard you speak actually one time, and you said that one of your life's goals is you want to be the #1 donor to Shriners.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. And
Oh,
currently
wow.
Justin Timberlake, that asshole,
Damn it, Justin Timberlake.
is the #1 donator. And good for him. I'm really happy that he is. But my goal is to dethrone him and anyone else. And so I've given millions to Shriners Children's Hospital and will continue to, because they help kids whose families can't afford the medical procedures and surgeries they need. And a dear friend of mine was helped by Shriners. Second one is Toys for Tots, which
Okay.
is run by the Marine Corps, that I donate to. 3 weeks before Christmas, we lock down the Target bright and early in the morning in Chino Hills, where my corporate office is, and the entire team goes and spends $50,000 to $100,000 of my money filling up shopping carts with toys for the Marine Corps to give out.
Wow,
to
thank
kids.
you.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. And then Compassion International. I've got 97 kids adopted through Compassion
Oh my gosh.
International, helping these kids who just don't have clean water, school clothes, etc., in third world countries. And people go, well, that's interesting. These are all kid-based charities. You think? And what am I doing? It's the most selfish thing I do. I'm healing the inner kid inside. I found that, and I didn't even connect those dots until one day someone brought it up to me. They're like, wow, all 3 of the charities you donate to are all child-based charities. Huh. And then, of course, I was not smart enough to figure it out on my own. So I go to my therapist, Kevin Downing, and I'm like, hey, Kevin, is it weird that I'm donating to kid-based charities? He goes, not at all. You're just healing the inner child.
So true.
So it's like the most selfish thing you can do is to give to charities, get involved. And so my speaking fee, like whenever I'm asked to speak on stage, right on my website, it says my speaking fee is non-negotiable. It's $50,000. That's that, because 100% of my speaking fee goes to Shriners Children's Hospital. And that's how I'm going to become the top donator to Shriners.
Do you have that little hat?
No, I'm not a Shriner. I don't want to be a Shriner. They keep reaching out to me, asking me if I could be a Shriner. I've got lots of trophies from Shriners Children's Hospital of all the different milestones that I've
Damn
hit.
it. I wish I brought one of the hats.
The little
with me.
monkey hats?
Yeah, 100%.
What are you going to do with it?
I want you to put it on.
Never.
Just for 2 seconds.
Why?
I'll get you one day. I'll get you one day.
I do have a lot of Shriner blankets. So when you're a Shriner child at a hospital, they give you a blanket while you're going through whether it's cleft palate or burn victim or whatever, they give you a blanket. And when you come out, you have a blanket. And now it's become a thing. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, where I'll be speaking at an event and somebody will kind of stand up and walk to me with they knew I was speaking there. They came to hear me speak, and they'll hand me their blanket. And so I've got 4 Shriners blankets from people who were once kids, got the medical help from Shriners, and they hand me their blankets.
Oh my gosh, I'm like,
that's actually
I'm
the
gonna
most
cry.
valuable
Hold on.
trophies.
I don't want to ruin my makeup, but that's
No
very
waterworks,
beautiful.
Amy,
No
no
waterworks.
waterworks.
I know, because nothing will get me like that. I will hyperlink all of those charities
Thank you.
underneath
That
this
means a lot.
episode here, so we can help push all of our listeners and viewers over to go check out and support those charities. In addition, I also just want to say, wow, way to be a man of not just your word, but like walk the walk of mission, purpose, and
Thank you.
team. Yeah, way to put all of those things together and bring us full circle. Where can people find you?
Best place to find me is on Instagram at Bedros Keuilian, or just my website, bedroskeuilian.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to come on the show.
Thank you.
This is so cool. I cannot wait to do this again with you in the future. And I'm definitely coming back to Operation Black Site. I want to get next time into jiu-jitsu, because you got a cool story about jiu-jitsu too. And I love jiu-jitsu.
Yes, well, I can't wait. It'll be fun to roll with you. I'm starting to get somewhat decent
I
at
mean,
it.
if you want to lose.
You're probably good at it.
I am good at it.
Okay, I'm not. So I'm like white
I don't
belt.
actually. I'm lying. I'm not that good at it. But you're probably pretty good, because you've been training hard.
I've been training hard. I've had some good black belts train me. So I've been in a very lucky position.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. Thanks for coming on the Amy Is Show. And for those of you still watching and listening, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and go follow this man, Bedros, to get your life together.